Today's edition of the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports is sponsored by Mint Mobile. You may have already heard of them. It's the cell phone company owned by actor Ryan Reynolds, who's got a great deal for the dog pound when you get plans starting as low as $15 a month, all by checking out mintmobile.com/chatsports. That link's in the comments and the description of today's show. Plus, we'll tell you more about their great benefits later on. But here's what we got on tap for you guys today. David Bell replacements. You're not really replacing David Bell, but the rookie wide receiver was placed on the PUP list. So we'll look at some free agents out there and kind of break down whether or not Andrew Berry will look to that. Plus, an interesting article from Mary Kay about Anthony Schwartz and whether or not he's kind of on a good track for a bounce-back sophomore season. But if you guys are ready for training camp, I'm talking real Cleveland Browns football, or as close as it can get until week 1 against the Panthers, make sure to hit that thumbs up icon to start today's show. So like I mentioned, David Bell replacement, so to speak, is sort of the topic of today's show pretty much, with his interesting tweet from Mary Kay a couple days ago saying rookie David Bell has been placed on the PUP list. Now, if you're not sure what the PUP list is, that is physically unable to perform. Basically, it's the IR version of training camp, except you can come off it at any point, and what it allows GMs to do is if, let's say, you even hurt your pinky toe, you can go on the PUP list and the Browns can sign someone else to their 90-man roster, and then that guy can come back off the PUP list as soon as pinky toe is fine. I'm not overly concerned about this David Bell injury, but it does look like he might be on it for a few weeks. GMs like to be kind of coy and just beat around the bush a little bit. Not really sure what the extent of the injury is, but if it is a couple of weeks, Andrew Berry might look to go add another wide receiver. Now, before he even looks at free agency, my first replacement is just the Browns roster, right? Looking in his own backyard and seeing what he's got on the depth chart here and guys who could make the most of some extra reps coming their way. I'm talking about players like Isaiah Weston, right? The UDFA out of Northern Iowa. Jamarcus Bradley, Michael Woods, your 6th-round pick from Oklahoma. Javon Wims, a veteran, we'll put it that way, keep it light here, former Chicago Bear who loves to keep his hands to himself. Honestly, I think the number one replacement is probably going to be players like Isaiah Weston, right? Another opportunity for these guys to take advantage of just moving up the line a little bit, getting some extra reps, and all of a sudden, maybe you get extra runs with the 2s and the 1s if you hadn't, David Bell was healthy, for example. But Isaiah Weston is a guy who I'm pretty high on. A UDFA out of University of Northern Iowa who did awesome things when he was in the FCS level, putting up over 2,400 yards in his career. Now, remember, FCS was hit harder than FBS during COVID, so they really missed that entire 2020 season. But 21 touchdowns despite all that. He's a fun player to keep an eye on for as training camp moves along. But speaking of the Browns roster here, I want you guys to give me a bold roster prediction. Is it someone like a UDFA makes the 53-man roster? Or is it a Dearness Johnson gets cut? Whatever it is, I'm curious what your bold roster prediction is. So let me hear it down in the comment section. Now we look to actual free agents here for David Bell replacements. And I start my list with Julio Jones. Not necessarily in order of who I'd want the most to least, but a bit of notoriety here because we're talking about a future Hall of Famer who has not looked like that the last 2 seasons, right? If you compare 2018 and 2019 when he was with the Falcons and he was still very much the Julio we all know and love compared to his last year in ATL and his lone season in Tennessee, they are just miles apart. One, of course, health being a big factor. Couldn't really stay healthy all that much last year. And same towards the end of his year, end of his career in Atlanta. But ignoring just the stats in general, Julio being unsigned this long into the offseason, I think gives us a clue as to where GMs sort of rank him in the pecking order of free agents. I think there is not a lot of optimism that Julio Jones can capture the old Julio self, and that the last 2 years is probably what you're going to get if you were to sign him. So I think there's something to be said about training camp starting tomorrow, today, depending on when you're watching this, Julio still being on the market, and all 32 GMs going, yeah, we know what Julio Jones is at this point, we'll pass. Now, before we get to the rest of my list, I want to tell everyone about the awesome benefits over at Mint Mobile. Not only do they have unlimited talk and text for you guys, but they are running on the nation's largest 5G network, which means you get high-speed data, a mobile hotspot, and all of that starting with plans at $15 a month. Guys, inflation sucks. That is something we can all agree on, right? Well, Mint Mobile is there to make sure you're not only paying the price at the pump, but you can save a couple bucks when you're on the largest 5G network thanks to Mint Mobile. It's super simple. You can keep your phone. You can keep your phone number. Thanks to new eSIM technology, you can also do it all from the comfort of your own home. Start right now at mintmobile.com/chatsports. All right, next replacement is Will Fuller, a popular name. A player that's had a lot of connection to the Browns, but none actually really being in the front office, which is kind of funny enough. But it's, of course, because his time with Deshaun Watson when they were in Houston together. He was his deep threat, right? He was his number 2 after DeAndre Hopkins, and former first-round pick out of Notre Dame has had an issue with playing a full season. Something he's never done or really even come super close to doing. But when he was hooking up with Watson down in Houston, 147 receptions in 33 games, 22 touchdowns. He can really stretch the field and add a new threat to this offense that you don't really have right now with Amari Cooper or David Bell or Donovan Peoples-Jones. Ultimately, though, the Browns have not had significant interest in Will Fuller. I think Browns fans, myself included, we've been driving this narrative of Will Fuller more than Andrew Berry has ever really looked at into it. So unless a big change of heart happens or you see some other new developments come down the pipeline, it doesn't seem all that likely that Will Fuller will end up being with the Cleveland Browns this year, despite being a relatively young guy who sure has had some injury issues. I mean, only played a game or two last year for Miami, finger issues to start the season, but when he's out there and when he's healthy, he's definitely one of the better receivers in the NFL. But I'll let you guys be Andrew Berry. Time to sit in his chair and be the GM. Should the Browns sign Will Fuller? S for sign or P for pass? Let me know what you're thinking down below. Next David Bell replacement is Cole Beasley. This one actually fits the mold a little bit better than Julio Jones and Will Fuller because Beasley actually works out of the slot, and that's what David Bell is slated to do this season. Now, I think Beasley's probably been more of the underappreciated, sneaky good receivers the last couple of years, 3 years with Buffalo so far, and he's put up good numbers for not being the top guy in the team. I mean, if you put up 967 yards, 4 touchdowns just 2 years ago, and you're the team slot receiver with Stephon Diggs on the roster ahead of you, speaks volumes to what you're able to do once you get into open space. I mean, statistically speaking, Cole Beasley is the number 1 receiver out there. He's had better seasons as of late than Will Fuller, than Julio Jones. He's also getting up there in the age column, but if you're Andrew Berry right now, you're not thinking down the line here. If you're signing anyone, it's for a 1-year vet minimum contract, and you are hoping to squeeze the last bit of football juice out of these players. So Cole Beasley could be someone that Andrew Berry looks to replace David Bell with if it ends up being a more significant and serious injury than at first thought, and he wants to just go right to the slot position and not bring on another Anthony Schwartz, DPJ, sort of ex-deep threat receiver, unlike Cole Beasley. Now, training camp, guys, is basically here. We had rookies and quarterbacks attend or show up the other day, and everyone else is going to be following suit over the next few days. So if you guys are looking for the number 1 Cleveland Browns YouTube channel that's going to be covering training camp, look no further. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and get locked in for the best Browns content here. 5th and final David Bell replacement. I'm going to go with T.Y. Hilton. You saw him on the thumbnail. Maybe it was the reason why you clicked on today's show, but he's got a connection with the Browns. And no, it's not Deshaun Watson. It's actually the backup quarterback, Jacoby Brissett. In fact, look at T.Y. Hilton's stats back in 2019 when Jacoby Brissett was the starter for the Colts, right? Only played in 10 games, but he got off to a great start with Brissett. That week 1 game, I remember I had Hilton on fantasy, and he went off like 2 touchdowns, got hurt, unfortunately, and the injuries have stuck with him over the last 3 seasons. Last year, T.Y. did not look like T.Y. He had neck injuries, only played in 10 games after missing the start of the season. Hilton probably has played he's definitely played his best football. I don't know how much football he's got left in him coming off that neck surgery. It's a pretty big surgery to get when you're over the age of 30 and you're playing in the NFL. But again, if it ends up being Jacoby Brissett for the first couple weeks of the season and Andrew Berry goes, all right, we have an opportunity to just bring a wide receiver in, see if he's in shape. Why don't we bring someone that Jacoby's familiar with, he had some good connections with in Indianapolis, like a guy like T.Y. Hilton. But overall, should the Browns sign a wide receiver? Just point blank. Give me a Y for yes or N for no. Let me know if this is a position that you are comfortable with as it currently sits, or if you're like, you know what? Maybe look to the free agency pool and bring on a veteran. Final segment of today's show. A really good and interesting article came out from Mary Kay over at Cleveland.com surrounding Anthony Schwartz and how he's, eyeing a good bounce back sophomore season. But a good chunk of the article talked about probably the most notable play so far in Schwartz's NFL career. Not the 48-yard reception against the Chiefs week 1, but instead it's the route or the catch he didn't make in week 2 against the Texans, which ultimately led to the ending of Baker Mayfield. The interception where he broke his leg or tore his labrum trying to tackle Justin Reed of the Texans. Now here was a little excerpt from Mary Kay's article. Schwartz rushed to help Mayfield, but it didn't stop the rookie from catching an earful from his coaches and help from the Baker Bros. The dedicated legions of Mayfield fans who believe he can do no wrong, many with an Oklahoma zip code. Mary Kay coming out with jokes saying Baker Bros. I didn't know if she kind of stooped to our degenerate level on Brown's Twitter, but she's leaning into it, and she is spot on there, no doubt about it. Now, Anthony Schwartz had his own quote in the article about the incident. Here's what he said. At the time, I felt I deserved it. I should have ran through the route, and even if I don't catch the ball, I probably can still break it up. But maybe the defense got Baker right there. Maybe he made the wrong read. There's a lot of things that go into the play, and you can't just say, oh, he stopped on his route. It's your fault. Basically what I've actually been saying for a little while here. So I think Anthony Schwartz might watch the show. But I read the whole article, a great piece. I recommend you guys do so as well. And Anthony Schwartz, I don't know. He did a decent job of trying to accept blame, but also be like, but it's also not my fault. You know what I mean? He kind of wanted to take it on the shoulder, but also at the same time go, it's not completely my fault. It's Baker's fault a little bit. And Baker admitted that too. I don't know if that was Baker just being a pro and being a veteran going, yep, I'm not going to put all this on a rookie. I'll shoulder literally some of the blame as well. Now, here's another interesting piece from that article. At times, Schwartz was open downfield and Mayfield ignored him. Schwartz would say, there were probably times where that happened. But if he didn't have trust in me, that's not anything on him. That's all on me. It's up to me to prove to him that he can trust me to be in the right place and catch the ball. And there's definitely something to Anthony Schwartz having a disappointing rookie season, and that may be because of that week 2 incident. I mean, go back to week 1. The guy gets 5 targets, 3 receptions, 69 yards. Week 2, that lone target that resulted in the end of Baker Mayfield would prove to be his only target of the game. In fact, go through the next couple of weeks. Week 3, 4, 5, 1 target each. Week 6, he has 3 targets, 2 receptions. Week 7, 3 targets. Case Keenum started that. Remember, that was Thursday Night Football against the Broncos. No targets in Week 8, 1 in Week 9, 1 in Week 10. Missed a couple games due to a concussion after the Patriots game. Week 14, 0 targets. Week 15, 1 target, 1 reception, touchdown in the Packers game. Week 16, 2 targets, and then Case Keenum returns and he gets 3 targets. So when Case was out there, 3 games after the Week 1 game, he has 3 targets. 2 of those were with Case Keenum. So there was definitely some sort of lack of trust between Baker and Anthony Schwartz after that play in Week 2. I'm not going to completely chalk it up to that. One, Baker just kind of sucked throwing down the field, and that's what you wanted out of Anthony Schwartz. 2, Anthony Schwartz was not 100%, dealing with soft tissue, hamstring injuries, and also a little bit of the concussion effects afterwards. Plus, Odell Beckham Jr. returned, so that took some reps away from Schwartz, but then OBJ was released, so that brought it back to Schwartz. Ultimately, I really do believe you can look at the Week 2 play and Baker Mayfield kind of putting Anthony Schwartz on an island going, after that, I ain't throwing you the football as much as I would have before. But let's show the guys some love, because ultimately, we should all root for Anthony Schwartz to be a successful Cleveland Browns player, because he could really be sort of an X factor on this team where he can add another deep threat and stretch the field out ability that you don't necessarily have in Amari Cooper, David Bell, DPJ a little bit, especially hoping for a breakout year this year, but Schwartz has that little track speed, and that can really be a difference maker. So type 10 down below. Now, to wrap up the video, we are almost at the end here, but 10 reasons why the Browns will be AFC North champs in honor of us hitting 10,000 subscribers. Reason number 7. We're looking at peak Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt this year. I think this is the year that they are both, of course, healthy, knock on wood, but we get the best possible football out of them. I mean, just look at their stats since Kareem Hunt came to Cleveland back in 2019. I'm going to talk about Nick Chubb first, though, because he's entering year 5, definitely on the towards, I wouldn't say the end of his career, but we know running backs' lifespans and shelf lives in the NFL are not as long as maybe they once were. But year 5 for Nick Chubb, coming off a year where he had some knee injuries, hopefully he's going to be ready to go and be a top 3 running back in the NFL, which I fully expect him to do. As for Kareem Hunt, I'm thinking more along the lines of last year with the Browns. He's in a contract year. He wants to prove that he's got more football left in him, whether it's with the Browns or with another team after this year. These guys definitely going to be coming out guns blazing. And also, just in general, let's say Deshaun Watson is suspended for X amount of games. They're going to be leaning on these guys more so than ever. Or if Deshaun Watson receives no suspension or very little suspension, this offense is going to be humming, it's going to be clicking, it's going to be moving down the field, and these guys are going to be more touches because these drives are not going to be punting as often, and these players are going to be getting in the red zone, more touchdowns, more of anything. I can really spin zone myself into talking into Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt having the best years possible with or without Deshaun Watson. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's show. I really appreciate all of you guys for making us a part of your day. And if you have not subscribed yet, please make sure you go ahead and do so.